Have you ever looked at a woman you're deeply drawn to and wondered what silent strings pull her heart, her choices, her deepest vulnerabilities? Before you rush to judge, pause for a moment and ask yourself, do you truly know what makes even the strongest woman falter, and how as a man you can either protect her or unintentionally break her? Today I'll reveal something most men never learn until it's too late. The top 7 female weaknesses every man must know, through the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and Stoic philosophy. But first, my friend, hit that subscribe button and like this video if you're someone who seeks to understand love not through manipulation, but through mastery. And watch this video until the very end, because these insights could transform your relationships and maybe your entire love life. Now let's build the stage together before I give you the list. Imagine this: Rome almost 2,000 years ago, an emperor who could command armies and yet still wrestled with the deepest questions of the heart. Marcus Aurelius. His words, written in private journals, speak not just to politics and power, but to love, human frailty, and yes, even the weaknesses that dwell within us all, especially those hidden in the female heart. So let's begin. Her heart seeks validation, even if she acts confident. Have you ever stood across the room, quietly watching her, the woman who seems to have it all together? She's laughing with her friends, phone lighting up with messages, posture straight, eyes confident. At that moment you might think, she doesn't need anyone's approval, least of all mine. But let me take you deeper, beyond what the eye sees, because this isn't just a point from a list, it's a real story. My story. Years ago I was in love with a woman named Sarah. She was beautiful, not only in her face but in the way she carried herself, like the world belonged to her. When she walked into a cafe, people noticed, and I, like so many others, was quietly enchanted. At first I thought she must be so secure, so above the need for praise or reassurance. But one evening, over coffee, something shifted. She confessed, almost whispering, "Do you think I'm enough?" It caught me off guard. How could she, the confident, unstoppable Sarah, doubt her worth? But the truth is, behind even the strongest woman's laughter hides a question she doesn't always dare to voice. Am I truly seen? Am I truly chosen? Have you ever loved someone like that? Someone who looked strong to the world, but in your quiet moments together, revealed the soft, breakable parts of her heart? If you have, you'll understand what I mean when I say, even the boldest woman often seeks validation, not from every man, but from the man she deeply respects. Now, Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, never wrote love letters to the women of Rome, at least not that we have, but he did leave us this wisdom. The opinion of others will only matter if you choose to value it. It's simple yet profound. Sarah didn't want validation from the crowd, from strangers. She wanted it from me, from someone whose words weren't cheap, whose gaze meant something real. And here's where most men get it wrong, and where I almost did too. We rush to compliment, to reassure, to flood her with words, but if praise comes too easily, it loses its weight. It becomes background noise, not a melody she longs to hear. Marcus Aurelius would have advised me and you, hold your praise like a precious coin. Spend it wisely, not to play games, but because value is born from scarcity. When you see her strength and her softness, when you acknowledge her beauty and her vulnerability, and you say, "I see you," not just what you show the world, but who you are, that's when your words sink deep. So ask yourself right now, have you loved someone who pretends to need nothing, yet silently aches to hear that she matters? Do you remember the look in her eyes when your praise was genuine, not flattery, but truth? That moment, my friend, is where love stops being performance and becomes presence. Because a woman's heart doesn't weaken by wanting to be seen. It's a human truth. We all crave to be truly chosen. And if you learn to give that, without losing your own center, you become unforgettable. That, as Marcus Aurelius might say, is the quiet strength that turns validation from manipulation into connection. And it's just the beginning of understanding her hidden world. 2. Emotional chaos over rational reflection. Have you ever been caught off guard by how quickly her mood could shift? One moment she's laughing at something small you said, and in the next, her face darkens, her words sharpen, and suddenly, you feel as if you're standing in the middle of a storm you never saw coming. Let me share a story that might feel familiar. Years ago, I fell for a woman named Lena. She was warm, vibrant, and so full of life that being near her felt like standing beside a fire on a cold night. But there was another side to her, a side that at first I didn't understand. One evening, we were out for dinner. The night was perfect, soft music playing, candles flickering, and the gentle hum of conversation all around us. Then, without warning, she grew quiet. Her gaze dropped to her plate. I asked what was wrong, but she shook her head, forcing a small smile. Minutes later, her words spilled out. "Why did you sound so cold when you answered your phone earlier? Was someone else calling you?" I was stunned. My mind raced to explain, to reassure. To me, it had been a quick, meaningless call. To her, it had been a crack in the certainty she felt. A tiny crack that, in her heart, became a chasm. Have you ever stood in that space? Watching someone you care for suddenly swept away by feelings so strong they drown out every calm thought? If you have, you know the helplessness of wanting to pull them back to shore, but not knowing how. In moments like this, Marcus Aurelius offers a whisper across centuries. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Lena's struggle wasn't a sign of weakness in the way most men assume. It was a sign of being deeply human. But as a man, I learned something powerful. When she drowns in emotional chaos, your own calm is what might save you both, Marcus. Aurelius wrote, "Stand firm as a rock against which the waves continually break." Think about that image, waves crashing, foaming wild, and the rock unmoving, grounded. It doesn't shout back at the sea. It doesn't crumble under the force of water. It remains solid, present. That's what Lena needed from me, though neither of us could name it back then. She didn't need me to argue, to panic, or to mirror her fear. She needed me to listen, to remain gentle but steady, to hold her hand, not to drag her away from her emotions, but to let her see by my stillness that the storm would pass. Ask yourself, have you ever tried to calm her by explaining and debating, only to watch her grow more upset? And have you ever instead just sat with her, steady and patient, and seen her finally breathe again? That's what Marcus meant. When the woman you love gets lost in emotional tides, your greatest gift isn't fixing it, it's anchoring her back to herself. Because in truth, her weakness isn't emotion itself. Emotion makes her beautiful, alive, and deeply connected. The weakness lies in letting those emotions steer every thought, every action without pause, without reflection. As a man, your calm presence isn't coldness, it's love in its most silent, powerful form, and often it speaks louder than any words ever could. Fear of loneliness, even if she seems independent. Have you ever loved a woman who swore she didn't need anyone? A woman who moved through life as if the world itself bent to her will. Yet behind her laughter and late-night stories, you sensed something deeper? Let me share a story about someone who taught me this truth in the most unexpected way. Her name was Amal. She was magnetic, ambitious career, countless friends, a social calendar so full it made me dizzy. When we first met, she told me plainly, "I'm not the type who needs a man to complete me." And I believed her, because everything about her life seemed to prove it. Yet as weeks turned into months, I started to notice the small cracks in her armor. One evening, after a long day, we sat on her balcony overlooking the city. The conversation drifted from work to memories, then fell into silence. She took a slow breath, then whispered words I still remember. "I hate going home to an empty apartment. Sometimes I'll stay out just to avoid it." It surprised me. This woman who looked like she ruled her world was quietly at war with the shadows that waited when the laughter faded. Have you ever seen that in someone? That subtle contradiction between fierce independence and an unspoken fear of being alone? It reminded me of Marcus Aurelius, who in his meditations urged himself, "Do not hanker after what you do not have. Instead, fix your attentions on the finest and best that you have." Yet in her heart, the finest thing she longed for wasn't a crowded room, but a soul who would choose her, and keep choosing her even in silence. Her weakness wasn't independence. That was her strength. The weakness was the fear that beneath that independence lay something unlovable. So she kept moving, kept talking, kept filling the empty spaces, afraid of what she might hear if she stood still. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "Guard your intentions. And as a man, this is where you must be most careful. To see her fear, yet never feed it. To offer presence, not possession. Because there's a fine line between being her comfort and becoming her escape." I learned this slowly. Instead of rushing to fill her silences, I stayed beside her. Sometimes we'd sit together in complete quiet, no words, no distractions. At first she fidgeted, checked her phone, shifted her gaze. But over time she grew still. She learned that loneliness doesn't have to mean emptiness. and that the right presence can turn silence from something terrifying into something safe. Have you ever been that person for someone? Have you seen the relief in her eyes when she realizes she doesn't have to perform to keep you beside her? That is the quiet power Marcus hints at. Not to fix her fear, but to make her see she's not truly alone. Because even the strongest, most independent woman carries a shadow of loneliness. If you can understand that, not to control her, but to honor her, you become someone she doesn't just want in the light, but someone she trusts in the dark. And that, my friend, is rarer than love itself. 4. Attraction to status over character. Have you ever wondered why a woman, wise, kind, and seemingly thoughtful, might still find herself drawn to a man whose character is hollow but whose status seems to shine? Let me tell you a story that opened my eyes to this truth.
Her name was Rania.
She was graceful, educated, and had a kindness that made strangers feel seen. When we first met, it felt as though we spoke the same secret language. Late-night talks about philosophy, laughter over small things, and shared silence that felt comforting rather than awkward. For a time, I truly believed character would always outweigh status in her heart. Then he appeared, a man whose very presence seemed to bend the room. Expensive watch catching the light. Confident words sprinkled with names of places he'd traveled and people he knew. His smile suggested secrets, and his posture suggested power. To me, he seemed shallow, surface without depth. To her, he seemed magnetic. At first, I tried to hide the sinking feeling inside, but over days and weeks, I saw her attention drift. Texts answered later, laughter less frequent, eyes occasionally lost in thought about someone else. It hurt, not just as a man who cared for her, but as someone who believed, perhaps naively, that character alone was enough. Have you ever felt that? That quiet ache of realizing she isn't immune to the pull of status, even if her heart is kind? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How ridiculous and how strange to be surprised at anything which happens in life." Those words humbled me. Status itself isn't evil. It's an ancient language of attraction written deep in human nature. Long before luxury brands and social media, women were drawn to the man whose position promised security, whose reputation suggested strength. It was about survival, not vanity. But here's where the weakness lies. Sometimes, the symbol blinds her to the substance. She may mistake loud confidence for quiet virtue, reputation for reality, and power for goodness. Marcus offers us something better. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Instead of resenting her attraction to status, I chose to become the man whose character built its own gravity. Not to compete by buying what I couldn't afford, but by becoming what status can't buy. Calm in crisis, honesty in small moments, loyalty even when no one's watching. And slowly I saw her eyes return, not because I had more than him, but because what I offered had depth, not decoration. Ask yourself, have you ever felt tempted to flash symbols of power just to catch her gaze? Or have you dared to trust that your quiet, steady character would speak louder, even if it spoke more slowly? Status might open the door, but character decides who stays. It's a truth Marcus Aurelius lived in the marble halls of Rome, and it's still true today. So remember, her weakness isn't that she notices status. It's if she forgets to look beyond it. And your task isn't to judge her, but to become the kind of man whose presence quietly says, "Here stands substance, not just shine, living in the future, fear and hope, rather than the present." Have you ever loved someone whose mind seemed to live a few steps ahead of today? A woman whose heart was so busy worrying about tomorrow, or dreaming about what might come, that she rarely stood still beside you in the quiet now? Let me tell you about someone who taught me what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "Confine yourself to the present." Her name was Amina. She was gentle, thoughtful, with eyes that always seemed to look beyond the moment, as if chasing something only she could see. When we were together, she'd talk about everything that might happen. What if I stopped loving her? What if her job changed? What if we moved to another city, got married, had children, and what if it all went wrong? Or sometimes she'd paint beautiful castles in the sky, vacations we hadn't booked, celebrations we hadn't planned, perfect versions of us we hadn't yet become. At first it was endearing. Her hope felt sweet. Her fear felt honest. But slowly I saw how those imagined futures stole from our present moments. One evening, sitting under a fading sunset, I tried to show her what I saw. I held her hand and said quietly, "Look around. Right now it's just us. No past mistakes, no future fears. Just this, but her eyes clouded again, mind racing to questions even she couldn't answer. Have you ever been there? Next to someone whose heart is always 2 steps ahead, or 2 steps behind, never quite beside you? Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily, never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. Amina's weakness wasn't that she cared too little. It was that she cared so deeply she became trapped in what if. Hope for tomorrow's perfection, fear of tomorrow's pain. They both stole today's peace. As men, our instinct is to reassure, to promise that nothing bad will happen, to sketch out a flawless future to soothe her fear. But Marcus reminds us the future isn't ours to give. Presence is. So instead of building bigger dreams or making impossible promises, I learned to do something simpler. Sit beside her in silence. Notice the sound of the evening breeze, the warmth of her hand, the way her heartbeat slowed when she stopped running through her thoughts.
Have you ever felt that moment?
When the person you love finally looks at you, not through a lens of what might be, but simply as you are, right now, that is the power of presence. Her weakness isn't loving deeply. It's letting tomorrow steal today. And your strength isn't in predicting the future, but in making the present feel so real, so safe that for a while she stops running ahead. Marcus Aurelius understood this centuries ago. Confine yourself to the present, because love in its truest form can only ever be lived in this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. And sometimes, helping her remember that is the most profound gift you can give. 6. Overthinking others' opinions. Have you ever watched the woman you love get dressed in the morning, not just for herself, but almost as if she could hear the silent whispers of everyone she might meet? Let me tell you about a woman named Miriam, who showed me this hidden struggle better than anyone ever could. Miriam was clever, funny, and the kind of person who could light up a room without saying a word. She had opinions sharp as blades and dreams big enough to fill notebooks. But beneath that bright energy, there was a quiet war she fought every day. I first noticed it when we'd go out together. She'd try on outfit after outfit, pausing in front of the mirror with questions that weren't really questions. Does this look too much? Too plain? What do you think they'll think? At first, I'd reassure her, you look perfect, but it never really stopped her doubts. She wasn't dressing for me or even just for herself. She was dressing for them, the faceless they who might judge, praise or whisper criticism she would never even hear directly. Have you ever loved someone like that? Someone whose heart is so tuned to the imagined voices of others that her own voice struggles to speak louder? It was Marcus Aurelius who gave me words for something I'd felt but never fully understood. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." When I first read that, it felt like reading about Miriam and honestly, sometimes about myself too. One evening she came to me, frustrated and tired, after spending hours editing a single post for social media. She deleted it in the end, not because she disliked it, but because she feared what strangers, people she might never meet, would say. She looked at me and asked almost in defeat, "Why do I care so much?" In that moment, I didn't lecture her. I didn't say, "Don't care what people think." Instead, I remembered what Marcus advised. Show by example, not words. So I did something simple. I shared something raw and imperfect of my own, without editing, without waiting for approval. And when she saw I was still standing, unbroken by the silence or judgment, I watched a small shift happen in her eyes. Have you ever done that? Showed her, not told her, that the world doesn't stop turning. If you live by your own measure, her weakness isn't vanity. It's the weight of a world that has taught her to measure herself by reflections in other people's eyes. And your role, if you love her, isn't to scold her for caring, but to live so firmly in your own truth that she learns, slowly, to do the same. Because nothing speaks louder than quiet confidence. Not arrogance, but that calm certainty Marcus Aurelius wrote about. A life judged by your own soul, not by shadows on the wall. Miriam once asked me, "What if people judge me anyway?" And I told her gently, "They might, but they don't get to live your life." That is the lesson she taught me in return. We can never silence the world entirely, but we can learn whose voice truly matters. And when she learns that from you, not because you told her, but because you lived it, that's when her hidden strength finally starts to shine. 7. The need to feel chosen, not just loved. Have you ever looked into her eyes and felt she wasn't just asking, "Do you love me?" but something quieter, deeper, and far more fragile? "Do you truly choose me, above all else?" Let me share a story that taught me the difference between being loved and being chosen. Her name was Hira. To everyone else, we were simply a couple in love. But inside the walls of our conversations, something more delicate was happening. One evening, sitting together under the faded yellow light of her living room, she asked me a question that seemed almost childlike. If she were standing right here, a woman prettier, funnier, everything, would you still pick me? It wasn't jealousy in her voice, it was fear. The fear of being loved just because I wanted someone, not because I wanted her. At first I thought, isn't love itself enough? But Marcus Aurelius helped me see the truth buried in her question. He once wrote, "Consider when you are offended at any man's fault. Turn to yourself and study your own failings." Those words made me reflect. Do I too sometimes love out of comfort, out of habit, out of loneliness rather than from deliberate choice? Hira's need wasn't about being told, "I love you." It was about knowing I had seen her flaws, her laughter, her wounds, her quiet battles, and after seeing all of it, I still said, it's you." Because here's what many men don't realize. A woman can feel your hesitation, even when your words sound perfect. She senses when your heart is still shopping for better, younger, newer, even if you never speak it aloud. Marcus Aurelius offered a quiet suggestion that changed how I loved her. Let your love purify you, not poison you. To love her truly meant choosing her daily, not because she was perfect, but because, imperfect as we both were, I saw something in her soul I didn't see anywhere else. Ask yourself, have you ever said "I love you" because you feared losing her? Or because it felt like it should be said? And have you ever instead slowed down, looked her in the eye, and silently chosen her, not as an escape from loneliness, but as a conscious act of devotion? When Hira finally felt that difference, I saw the fear fade from her gaze. Not because I promised her a forever no man can promise, but because she felt I had chosen her, not just the idea of being in love. That, my friend, is the weakness that lives quietly in many women's hearts. Not the need to be loved, but the deeper, almost hidden need to be singled out to feel irreplaceable. Marcus teaches us that love born from strength, not desperation, is what truly frees both people. So let her see that your love is not a habit, not a convenience, but a deliberate choice, made each day, even when you could choose differently. Because when she knows you love her from strength, not need, that's when she finally feels safe enough to offer you her truest self in return. And that's not just love, that's devotion. And it's rarer than most men ever realize. Before you go, now you might wonder, why does any of this matter? Because if you understand these silent weaknesses, not to control her, but to protect her, you become the kind of man a woman respects, trusts, and loves deeply. Marcus Aurelius never wrote directly about dating or modern love, yet his wisdom guides us to the same truth. Master yourself first, then you can love her better. So if you've watched this far, remember, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with a friend who might need it. Not for manipulation, but for mastery, to become a man of calm strength in a world that often rewards loud weakness. And finally, with that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.